My name is Barry Roche. I am the Chief Information Officer of Concern Worldwide. We're just about 50 years old now, a couple of years gone now at this stage. We are a global aid humanitarian agency. And our vision and our mission is basically determined by one thing. Basically, we are in the mission of ending extreme poverty, by whatever means possible. So in terms of stats, what does that mean? So we're working globally. We're working across 25 different countries, from Haiti in the West all the way over to North Korea. But the majority of our programming takes place in Asia and Africa. So to help us do that, we have about 3,500 phenomenally dedicated, really serious about their job people, working from about 50 different countries too as well, and who work in kind of some occasionally very challenging conditions. It could be that there's a natural disaster, it could be that basically there's an area of conflict, and so they really kind of put it on the table each and every day for Concern and for the people that we work with. In terms of our reach, so we reach about 25 million different people every year, and some of those people are living on less than $2 a day. And so our mission within Concern, within IT within Concern, is to support those people, to support our frontline workers basically, in doing what they do. And the maxim that we kind of adopt for that is that IT should never be an obstacle. People might be familiar with the analogy of using IT as a utility. If you walk into a room and you turn on a light switch, it just comes on. And that's, I suppose, what we're trying to get to. So that basically all the services that we provide to our staff and to our beneficiaries and to our donors, let's say, they never need to worry about it. It just works, each and every day. So they're able then to concentrate on doing what they need to be able to do and doing what they do best. Where else do we fit in that? As you can appreciate, I suppose we've got some kind of diverse challenges and consequently responsibilities. Some of the things that we kind of for granted in our world, let's say, are not necessarily present in the areas that we're operating in. Never mind, let's say, peace and security, but the availability of power. Power is not necessarily available all the time, in the fashion that we're used to. And connectivity, that might not be there too as well. So we always have to kind of tailor our solutions and our approaches and our responses to kind of take that into equation, But I'm really, really lucky. Every day I get to work with a phenomenal team, kind of rise to all those challenges, are able to deliver it operationally, support us with our solutions, and deliver a really, really good user experience, which ultimately supports the mission statement. I'm really glad you used the word effectively, actually, because being effective, it's at the core of our support. If you take the analogy, if you had a first responder and they've just got off a plane and they're trying to respond to an earthquake in Nepal or a hurricane in the Philippines, etc., what they want out of us is they want it to work, and sometimes we need to step back ourselves a little bit and say, okay, well, hang on a second, that solution might work in New York, or might work in Dublin, or might work in London, but at the very extended edge of our network and our kind of capacity, let's say, will it work then, and will it work in those types of circumstances? So sometimes for us, the most high-tech solution is not necessarily the best solution. So sometimes we have to kind of pull it back and maybe deliver something like a low-tech solution, but ultimately, the answer has to be bounded by the word effectiveness. And thankfully, as connectivity particularly has evolved over the last kind of 10, 15 years, we're able to deliver solutions which can bridge that divide. So we can deliver now cloud-based solutions globally, so across all of our projects. For instance, we're running a digital workplace project at the moment, which is effectively an entire revamp of our intranet and SharePoint online real estate. And part of that is basically to try and bridge that internal communications gap that we've got internally. So whether you're in an office in Kenya or Malawi or Sierra Leone, or Pakistan, You should have access to the same type of information that everybody has got access to as well. It helps them in their day-to-day activities, but helps us in their programming activities, because how else would we learn unless we've got access to that information? We could have somebody in Pakistan who's working on the exact same type of problem as somebody in Malawi, and we want to be able to share that information, because ultimately that kind of sharing promotes effectiveness, and all of that then necessarily in terms of effectiveness, again, it needs to be underpinned by another principle. And one of those principles that we use is that basically we follow user-centered design principles. So we always go back to the user. We're constantly reiterating what we're working on. Does this work? Is this solving your pain points? What do you think of this solution? So we have to kind of be tough on ourselves and go back and make sure that we're delivering the right solutions, because it has to work equally as well as for somebody in New York, as for somebody in Malawi, as for somebody in Afghanistan. Meaningful is, once again, I think is the key word here. And in the era that we're living in, I think it's something that has to be at the forefront of our mind. And for concern, meaningful really means, are we meeting the mission statement? As I said earlier on, our mission statement is about ending extreme poverty. So for us, that's always our lens. To have a look at what we're doing, and is it allowing us to be as impactful as we possibly be? And sometimes that isn't necessarily obvious, because I suppose if you're a for-profit agency, let's say, it's okay, well, am I impactful? Where's the bottom line? For us, it's not necessarily quite the same scenario, so what we're looking at is trying to generate value for the organization. And how can we generate value for the organization? So that can take numerous different forms. It could be that we're trying to improve the workflows that support the finance process, therefore, great, something that used to take 3 weeks now takes 3 days. Okay, great, that's good. Sometimes it could be, as I was saying, reference to our digital workplace. It's about breaking down information silos. But for us, again, then too, as well, it could be something that basically we develop a tool that helps us to measure malnutrition rates more accurately in somewhere like Sierra Leone or Liberia. So that's kind of where we focus on. And in terms of how we kind of manage the change itself, I think there's loads of different kind of management books and theories on change, but I suppose going back to that user-centered principle, they're the people that we all basically try and put at the forefront of our minds, and when we're developing these solutions and when we're tackling these type of problems, this is what we're thinking about. And I think ultimately there has to be a really, really solid understanding and appreciation of why are we doing this? Does it map to the mission statement? Is it impactful? And for me particularly, I like to think that you should be able to explain the why in 30 or 60 seconds. To say, if you can't explain the why of something in that particular time frame, you might need to revisit your decision and the purpose of your request, let's say, because it should be abundantly clear about why exactly you're trying to do something. So I suppose for us, that's where the meaning comes from. It's okay, well, does it meet the mission statement or not? If it doesn't meet the mission statement, it's probably not that meaningful for us. I suppose it goes back again, to, let's say, the user. Are they happy with it? Sometimes the people think, let's say, IT is IT, but it kind of, and I came from, let's say, over various different jobs, I learned about customer service, working in restaurants, and working in bars, and ultimately, I think you have to be, in many respects, customer service orientated. Even though it seems far removed from that type of scenario, but at the end of the day, we have internal customers, trying to support external customers, let's say, so we have to be in the business of making those people happy. I suppose that could take many different forms, but I think one of the key ingredients for me is try to preempt things, steering the IT ship can be quite difficult. And you have to kind of tackle two different things at the same time. You kind of have to basically look forward into the future, try and predict those trends, let's say, and predict those waves of change, as somebody else had referenced to me before, and decide which wave you're going to surf, let's say. So you have to make technical choices, and you kind of have to hope that I'm making the right choice here, you know. But then also at the same time, you need to pull off this trick where you're nimble, you know, and you might need to be able to respond to things in a fairly ad hoc fashion too, as well. So you're trying to be all things to all men at the same time, you know, to keep the ship going, respond to immediate changes, but have a like people refer to like the North Star, to have a North Star in terms of where you're driving to, on, let's say, so how that might be reflected would be in having clearly defined strategic objectives for yourself. So, well, what is my purpose here? What am I trying to do? So you're not just managing the day-to-day activities, but you have a real focus on where the long-term activity is going to be, whether it's in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So ultimately know, so, okay, this is where I want to be. And so within Concern, let's say, I know for one of our kind of missions is to get rid of all our servers. You know, we've got hundreds of servers situated around the globe, and where possible, we want to kind of pull them out and push everything up into the cloud. You know, would it be meaningful to the rest of the organization? Probably not. They won't necessarily recognize that. But what would be meaningful to them would be like, oh, this is great because I've got less downtime. You know, that would be meaningful to them. What would be meaningful to them be less downtime and have more accessibility and better accessibility to the things that I need. As I map it back to my original statement, you do want to be a utility. You just basically want IT to be invisible. It just works. Everybody's got everything what they need at the tip of their fingertips when they need it and how they want it to as well.